Yeah, there we go. Hi, Charles Higginson here. Welcome to Story Slam. It'll be on in a few minutes. That little tune was something I call Bill's Bounce. I wrote it a long time ago, and I just recently renamed it for Bill Crahan, a teacher of
Yeah, I
mine.
guess.
Um, this next one was a number one hit for Randy Travis, and it's kind of about overplaying your hand. You've been too gone for too long. It's too late to come back now. It's been so long since you knocked at my door. Now you're just an old song nobody sings anymore. I've got a new love and she's a true love. But darling, how could you have known? 'Cause you've been too gone for too long, and it's too late to come back now. You've come a long way, going the wrong way. Don't even set that suitcase down. You wanted to roam, now you're paying that bill. You're an old rolling stone who just rolled over the hill. I had a good cry when you said goodbye. I didn't want to see you go, but you've been too gone for too long, and it's too late to come back now. I had a good cry when you said goodbye. I didn't want to let you go, but you've been too gone for too long. So why don't you just stay gone? Yes, you've been too gone for too long, and it's too late to come back now. I see hands waving. That's gratifying. That's wonderful. Thank you. This next tune comes all the way from 1935. It was first recorded by Fats Waller, and approximately 7,500 people have recorded it since he did. But his version is worth looking up. Ever since I was a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service, I have been rather fond of this tune. I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. I'm gonna write words oh so sweet. They're gonna knock me off my feet. Kisses at the bottom, and I'll be so glad I got 'em. I'm gonna smile and say, I hope you're feeling better. And close with love the way you do. I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. I'm gonna write words oh so sweet, they're gonna knock me off my feet. Kisses at the bottom, and I'll be so glad I got 'em. I'm gonna smile and say I hope you're feeling better, and close with love the way you do. I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came. I'm gonna make believe it came. I'll make believe it came from you. I hear somebody whooping out there. One of my favorite artists to emulate, copy, steal from is Keb Mo, who's a blues singer basically, but he branches out, and some of his material is just, a lot of it's just wonderful. This is a song from his 2006 album called Suitcase. And it expresses a sentiment that, you know, we need to remind ourselves of every now and then, I think. Let's go drifting through the trees. Let's go sailing on the sea. Let's go dancing on the juke joint floor. All our troubles all behind us, have a party so easily forgotten, or the most important things, like the melody and the moonlight in your eyes, and the song that lasts forever, with each verse getting better all the time. Life is beautiful, life is wondrous. Every star above is shining just for us. Life is beautiful on a stormy night. Somewhere in the world the sun is shining bright. I get crazy, so afraid I might lose you one fine day, and I'd be nothing but a tired old man. And I don't want to be without you at the party, so easily forgotten are the most important things, like I love you, I do. And I want to spend my days and nights walking through this crazy world with you. Life is beautiful, life is wondrous. Every star above is shining just for us. Life is beautiful on a stormy night. Somewhere in the world the sun is shining bright. So easily forgotten are the most important things, like I love you, I do. And I want to spend my days and nights walking through this crazy world with you. Life is beautiful, life is wondrous. Every star above is shining just For us, life is beautiful on a stormy night. Somewhere in the world, the sun is shining, shining bright. This is such an odd moment in these performances that we have these days, where I can see a few people's hands flapping back and forth, and at least it tells me you realize the song has ended. So that's something. That's some kind of feedback. I've heard that a lot of dogs have been rescued during COVID, which is one of the bright spots anyway. That's a nice thing. This next song is by a fellow named Curtis Salgado, who's another one of those people who's been around a lot, doing a lot of things. He was actually the singer for Santana for a while. He worked with Roomful of Blues. He's been on his own a lot of the time. But the salient fact about this fella is that he is the person who inspired John Belushi to create the characters of the Blues Brothers. So you can imagine how much trouble he was when he was younger. This is a song of his that goes out to anyone out there who is now or has recently stewarded the older dog. I wish I could read the minds of women. I wish I had gills for swimming. I wish I had movie star looks. I wish I knew every trick in the book. I'd like to feel first love again. Maybe be 20 years younger. But the greatest wish I want to come true. I want my dog to live longer. Wish I was king of rock and roll. Wish I was cool and hip and with it and in the know. I wish I'd wrote blowing in the wind. I'd like to see my late mother again. Rid the world of poverty. Maybe get rid of hunger. But the greatest wish I want to come true. I want my dog to live longer. I want my dog to live longer. 'Cause when he goes, I'll be blue. And if I had the power, I'd make him live as long as me and you. God's got his reasons for everything, but that just makes it worse. A human lifespan should equal a dog and a man, 'cause dog spells God in reverse. He cheers me up when I feel sad. Might be the best friend I ever had. And I don't care where his nose has been. I'll let him lick my face again and again. His love is unconditional. That's why he makes me stronger. But the greatest wish I want to come true. I want my dog to live longer. The greatest wish I want to come true. I want my dog to live longer. Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks a lot. This last one, we got time for one more. And this goes back to Kev Mo, the same album, Suitcase. And he's good at this. Another sentiment that we could do with more of these days. Do you ever get worried and your load is hard to bear, and your life is like a sad, sad story, and no one seems to care? If you ever need someone to talk to, if you ever need a helping hand, I'll be your ship out on the ocean. I'll be your water in the desert sand. You know I've been there. I've felt like you do. I felt like winter would never turn to spring. But everyone I know has had their problems, and there's a solution to everything. If you ever need someone to talk to, if you ever need a helping hand, I'll be your ship out on the ocean. I'll be your water in the desert sand. And after you've found your way, you won't owe me nothing, but you're gonna know your well will never run dry, never run dry. If you ever need someone to talk to, if you ever need a helping hand, I'll be your ship out on the ocean. I'll be your water in the desert sand. I'll be your water. I'll be there for you. I'll be your water. I'll give you shelter. I'll be your ship out on the ocean. I'll be your water in the desert sand. Thanks. Have a good slam. Francisco, have a good time. Take it away. Good to see everybody. Go, go.
All right. Greetings. Bring on the night. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Story Slam. This is the free Story Slam virtual edition with the theme Dazed and Confused. That was my version of the Zeppelin, Dazed and Confused, in case you didn't catch that for you youngsters. Anyway, thank you so much, Charles Higginson. That was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I especially love the Kev Mo songs and that one about the dog. You know, that comes real close. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it's going to be a great evening. Today we have 7 storytellers. And before we get into any of that, I would like to thank the Art Center for its support for the arts, specifically storytelling. And, it's been difficult with the pandemic and so on, as you know. If you get a chance, please go to the Lawrence Arts Center website, check it out. They have a lot of things going on. There are a lot of good classes. And, it's been tough, but we'll get through it. Anyway, thank you so much to the Lawrence Arts Center. And let me just mention this. This is the first time that I'm hosting. I've never done this before, so you're going to bear with me. Any boo-boos, I'm trying my best here. But anyway, I would like to thank Jessica, Elizabeth, and David, and Samaria. I've been attending Story Slam since about 11 years ago, season 1, since the very first one. And I only missed Story Slam about once a year. And I'm going to tell you why when I tell my story. So I like it, there's a lot of work that goes into this. So I like to, bring it on for them. They do a lot of work and it goes smooth now, but really it takes a lot of effort. So thank you very much to them. And a quick intro to Story Slam. I understand, and I know that some of you are first timers just by going through the Brady Bunch squares, the Hollywood squares, whatever you want to call them, So tonight we have 7 stories. They're basically 2 formats. There's the long format story, and those are people that sign up in advance. And those are anywhere between 5 and 8 minute stories. And they're true stories, they're personal stories. And of course, with the theme Dazed and Confused, that's the theme of the night. But they're also impromptu stories. And I'll be calling for those every 2 or 3 stories, depending how much time we have. So what you need to do is, if you're inspired by something that you heard from a storyteller and so on, then you need to send a text, with a chat right there on your Zoom to Jessica or Samaria, and they will alert me and let me know, they'll keep track of the time and know those logistics, and they'll let me know if you have time to do it, okay? And then I'll call you for it. So please feel free to join. Some of the best stories sometimes come out of those impromptu, people that are just inspired by the moment. And this is a very family friendly, well, I shouldn't say that, not exactly. But anyway, a friendly family kind of atmosphere. So feel free to express yourself. It's fine. It's not going to ruin your political career, nothing like that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention before we get to the storytellers is that Free State Story Slam is free. It's a free event, but we ask people to pay what you can. And what that means that on this Zoom, somewhere around there is a link when you got the invitation, and you can donate whatever you can, and that goes straight to the Art Center. So that's awesome. So if you can do that, please do. Think about it as a virtual jar. Would you drop your $5 bill, $10, $20, or $100 bill? Who knows? Whatever. So I would also like to take time to thank our contributors or our donors, all of them. But if you contribute more than $100, then you get to be called on the events. So I'd like to call their names now. These are 100+ sponsors: Jim and Sharon Hammond, Jody Johnson, John Kennedy, the Lawrence Busker Festival, Ann and David Holland, Valerie and Francisco Bidot, David Ritter, Margie Wakefield Law Office, and Alexander Buck. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And without further ado, let's get into the stories. So I'm going to be the first one up. I got the icebreaker roll. So before I introduce the storytellers, for those newcomers, I'll say a very short bio, say something, so you can know who's telling the story. And so I'll start with myself. I will speak in third person. So Francisco spent much of his life going back and forth between Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and the Dominican Republic. Then a long distance relationship between Arizona and Lawrence, Kansas brought him to Lawrence. And he has been he got married with his wife, Valerie, who's downstairs. He's in exile. I don't want any echoes up here. So he's been in Lawrence for the last 20 years, 2 kids, Michael and Allie, and we just left the town. And if you ever see me around town, I'm going to quote some of my hobbies. I got a lot of hobbies, but I'm going to quote some of them. So, stop me. If you see me, if we have one of these in common, they'll be great. So I enjoy making noises on the electric guitar, blues rock and that kind of thing, blues, jazz, anything kind of fusion related. I love that. Photography, model aviation, and I have a long list of alcoholic drinks that I like. So hard to go wrong with me. Anyway, thanks for coming, and I'm going to start with the first story. The title of my story is "The Atomic Punks," and let me put this guitar down first for a second. All right, so the Atomic Punks. So that is a story that dates back to the 1980s, early 80s, 1983 and so on. And it takes place in the Dominican Republic. And that's probably the last place you're going to think of anybody playing heavy metal or playing any kind of rock music. So it needs a little context. So I'm going to try to explain where all that comes from. So my parents are immigrants. You know, they migrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic in the late 60s. And I arrived in JFK International Airport in 1971. And, you know, spent a couple of days in Brooklyn, New York. And then all of a sudden I found myself in a classroom where nobody spoke Spanish, you know, and there were no bilingual programs or anything like that. So I watched a lot of cartoons, and I swear that I learned my English from Bugs Bunny, which I hear now that it's not such a great thing. So, but that's where I learned that at some point I could understand what the rabbit was saying. So I go like, I'm on this. And so as you can imagine, you know, living in two different countries and so on, it creates a lot of confusion. So it goes through the thing, you know, I always grew up as a confused kid in a good kind of way, but, you know, not knowing where to place things exactly. And part of that was because I had my childhood in Brooklyn, New York in PS 19, Public School 19. And I remember that they would take us, line us all up, girls and boys sometimes, you know, line them through the auditorium. And then we would sit down and they would put a big thing in the auditorium, like a big transparency thing, whatever they called that machine that you put paper on and, you know, like a copy, and then it projected big. It was low tech back then. And we would sing songs like Country Roads, John Denver, Three Dog Night, Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's, you know, that's what I listened to as a kid, and that's how I developed my taste, right? And I like guitar music, as you probably know it by now. So, you know, at some point, my parents didn't want me and my brother, living in New York. And the problem with that was that if you ever look at those old Steve McQueen movies, you know, Escape from the Bronx or whatever those things were actually true. They're probably worse than what you saw in the movies. So back then, you know, my parents thought it wasn't a good idea to let us spend our childhoods in that kind of environment. So they worked in the U.S. and made all the efforts they can to send some money over and leave us with some relatives and take us to the DR where we can be kids. And by that, I mean, we can have a dog, you know, and I did have a dog, you know, many pets, I still do, you know, and ride a bicycle and go to a house and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I see what they're doing. Now that you're a parent, you kind of like understand their sacrifice and why they let go of their kids for, you know, even temporarily, because they thought it was a better thing for them than living in New York and having to deal with every night, and I kid you not, every night there was a fight between the gangs from one street to the other street. So have you ever seen the Stanley Kubrick movie, The Warriors? No nonsense. That's a lot of it is real. You know, those things were actually they were actually happening. You know, so I was a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, and my dad used to tell me get away from the window. So no wonder they sent me to the DR and my brother. You know, they didn't want us around for any of that. So but I did get a chance to do my elementary school in Brooklyn, New York, like I said, and learn English from Bugs Bunny and all that. And then all of a sudden they decided when we were older that we're going to go to the DR and do our high school there. And that's the time puberty hits and all that. And you start listening to music and figuring out what your favorite bands are and all that kind of stuff. And I went to a private school over there, and we had uniforms and all that. And let me make this clear. So the Dominican Republic is a poor country. I was one of the lucky ones. I was one of the privileged ones. I got to go to a private school, and I had guitars, and I had my Commodore computer in the 80s and all that. I even have subscriptions from US magazines with, you know, for computers and all. total dork, but in another country. So I wasn't one of the deprived ones. I just wanted to make that measure clear, So in my school, I met a friend called Henry, and Henry was really into music, and he's still a good friend. And Henry wanted to start a band. It was early 80s, and we're talking MTV. We're talking bright neon colors, and I see some of the faces on the little squares up there. Some of you are not that young. I'm pretty sure you can remember all of that. So I was in a tropical country with a lot of windsurfing and all that, and listening to a lot of those Quiet Riot and whatever you name it, and all those things. It was a lot of fun. So the school wasn't a lot of fun. The school that I went to had it was a big school. It had a separate yard for the boys and another yard for the girls, and a neutral zone in between, patrolled by 3 teachers at all times. So as you can imagine, that wasn't the greatest thing ever. And to this day, I don't wear yellow, because the uniform that I wore as a kid was khaki pants and a yellow shirt. And to this day, I can't stand yellow. I just wear it for too many times. So you're never going to see me wearing that. But anyway, I met one of the good things is that I met my friend Henry. And Henry, like I said, was really into music. And I was getting into music too, early 80s. And everybody had their Sony thing. What do they call it? The Walkman, with a little orange little thingies on top here, and roller skating and all that. I did all those things. So he came up to me one day and said, "We should start a band." And I go, "I don't know how to play." And he goes, "No, we should start a band." And I go, "Okay." So I kept that in mind, and I grabbed my dad's Spanish classical guitar, something like what you see in the backpack there. If you can see it in the video, I don't know if you can. And I taught myself a few chords, like 3 chords. And I played it to him and I said, "Okay, you're the guitar player. You're the lead guitar, as a matter of fact. And what do you play, Henry?" And I say, "I play bass." And I go, "Okay, that's fine. And we need a drummer." So he said, "I know a drummer." So he hooked us up with a friend from his neighborhood called Luis Pena. And Luis was like 5 or 10 years older than us. So he was the old man. We were like, late teens and, almost college age and all that. And Luis was a drummer. He didn't have a drum kit. He logged the drums and he just played air drum. And we rehearsed like that, and we found that a better way to rehearse was to, instead of playing air drums, actually to get, plastic, like empty water bottles, the gallon ones, just like put them all together and just hit them. So that was the drum kit. And we only had one guitar, my guitar. So I practiced one song with the guitar and then lent it to Henry so he can play bass on the other one with the top 4 strings. And that was we did that for 3 or 4 times until one day. This is the 80s, right? Until one day, his mother, Henry's mother's cousin, was opening a bar and said that they actually they were looking for acts. It was opening day and they were looking for different acts. And, Henry brought us up and they said, "Sure." And it was a bar called the New York Bar in the DR. And let me just give you a picture of what that looked like. It was in a busy intersection, it's an intersection there. And it wasn't really a bar in the sense of the bars that you find in the US, kind of with a bunch of beer, neon lights and things like that, and kind of dark. This was bright, and open all around and hanging plants and people drinking beer, basically like a beer garden kind of thing. And it had a little stage. And, we were told that was our first gig. So we said, "Sure, why not?" So, the day of the gig came up and they told us that we were on at 6. And when you're young, you're really brave. I had no idea that my guitar skills were limited. The drummer didn't know he borrowed a drum kit. So that was maybe the second time he's been on a real drum kit. And Henry, borrowed a bass, so we had a band. So we went up there and, but you got to look good. That was the other thing, right? If you're in the 80s, you just can't play guitar. You got to look good doing it. So my guitar hero, who passed away last year, was Eddie Van Halen. He's the one that turned me on to playing guitar, really, after seeing him play and all that. So I figure, how am I going to dress for the performance? So I got a dress shirt. If you look at the Van Halen 1 and see how Eddie's dressed around, that's kind of like what I try to imitate. Put on a dress shirt, leave it open, bare chested, roll up the sleeves, put some wristbands because of the sweat and all that. And, that's what you look like. You're a skinny kid doing those things. It's the 80s. I weighed 120 or 130 pounds. I'm 170 right now. So imagine what it looked like there. It was like a paper thin little thing. So when you're young, that's the kind of stuff you do. So, and I never smoked, but I thought it would be cool to put a cigarette on the headstock and let it burn like Keith Richards. So I had one of those too. Well, my kids can't see that now, which is great. But I went with that kind of gimmick for a while. I hate smoking, but anyway. So the day of the gig came over, and we were supposed to start at 6. We got there at 4, kind of early, and we were told we're not going to get paid. There's no money here. It was Henry's cousin or her mom's cousin, whatever it was. It was the opening day, and there's no money. There's free beers. All you can drink, just ask for it and we'll take it to you. And I thought it was a sweet deal. That was fine. That worked for us. So we got there at 4 and started ordering beers because we're going to be at 6, kind of warmed up, kind of something like this, but with a green bottle. And we sat on the curb. We didn't go inside the bar. We sat around the curb on the outside, and we can see all the performance and music that was going on in there. There was a lot of those cheesy Latin American ballad singers, with a karaoke thing singing around. It wasn't a rock audience at all. These are just like normal everyday folk, from working people and so on. They didn't understand what rock music was or anything. So we were supposed to be at 6 and we kept getting delayed. And the place was packed. And we kept getting delayed. No, it's not 6, it's 7. Okay, and what about this one? So we're pretty confused, very confused, like, we're supposed to be at 6. And many years later, I understood what was going on. The place was packed. Nobody understood rock music. So did they want to put the rock band and scare the crowd away? Makes sense. So they kept pushing us, and we kept asking, are we next? Nope. Maybe the next one. Nope. We were now like around maybe 10. And we got there like around 4. So we've been drinking beer all that time on the curb. We got to watch a fight. There was a lady that got off a car and went into the bar and started yelling at this guy that was talking to another woman. I think that was her husband or boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever. And she grabbed the bottle and went like this at him. And then while she did that, we were just like looking from the curb. She actually flipped the table over, and there was a whole big commotion in there. We were just watching it like this, like kind of dazed already, like, oh, wow, look at all that going on in there. So the whole scene cleared out in about 15 minutes. It was back to normal. Actually, the guy stayed. She took a car back home, and, he stayed wherever he was. Never understood it. But anyway, we couldn't care less. We just loved it. We thought it was the rock and roll life. It's part of it. So, we were hanging around the curve and all that. And then finally at 10, we were on. And what happened was, I had my little Marshall amp. That was my amp back there. It was just a little thing, and I mic'd it, and I put it on one of the bar stools. And there were people still there, in the bar and so on. So we started playing. First song in the set was You Really Got Me, the Van Halen version. And it was kind of jazzy because we were playing it in different keys. We kind of dazed out of being there from 4 o'clock in the afternoon up until 10 with free drinks, all you can drink. So we played it in different keys, and we go like, that's strange, and at the end of this, we finally got it towards the end, and then it ended at the same time and in the same key. So that was good. So we saved the song. And if you're a musician, you know what that means. You got to end exactly at the right time, and that sort of saves it. And then the second song, that's when the train wreck happened. I had a 10-foot cable connected to my little Marshall amp on top of the stool, and we were playing Paranoid from Black Sabbath. And I went like this, and I accidentally knocked up my amp over, and my amp knocked the microphone that was in front of it. And then that one knocked my chorus microphone, and then knocked Henry's microphone down, and the whole thing went down. The whole stage collapsed. And throughout all of that, Henry kept playing his bass. He never stopped, and the drummer kept playing. It never stopped. And, you heard a guy over there in the audience, in Spanish yelled, I'm going to translate it for you. Coño. That's así se toca, which means bleep, that's how you play. You know? So he was excited to see all this commotion and everything. We just knocked the whole stage. I did it. So it was my fault. So I went over and put everything back together. After that, then the drummer in one of the other songs, he lost his drumsticks. They just slipped, put the sweat out of his hands. And he had to leave the stage. Henry and I kept playing. And he actually left to the audience in the dark looking for his drumsticks. We only had two. So he found them, came back in, and we finished the song. And again, we ended at the same time. So anyway, it was a complete disaster, a real Dazed and Confused kind of story. But I got to tell you this. To this day, we stayed tight, the ones that survived. Luis, the drummer, he passed away 10 years ago. And to this day, every single October, I go back to New York, meet with Henry, and we get everybody from that era together and when we do a jam. And that's the only reason that I ever missed a story slam in October, because I got to go hang out with those guys for that reason. These are my childhood friends. We did all those stories, we played all those things, and eventually we did get better. But, that's the only reason that I would miss a story slam, and hope you enjoy the story. Thank you. All right. So next storyteller, Matt Mayer, who's David's cousin, and short bio, born and raised in Michigan and now living in Baltimore, Maryland. He is a big fan of the Moth. Other than telling a story during a 7th grade forensics competition, this will be the first time him telling a story on stage. That's awesome. Always good to hear that. In his spare time, he enjoys hiking and I'm going to risk it. Patapsco, thank you, Valley State Park. Road biking in northern Baltimore County and searching for the perfect everything bagel. That's a good cause. All right, so take it away, Matt.
All right, thanks, Francisco. Well, my story is going to start similar in the 80s. In California, I was 19 years old on a solo bike ride, and I was riding down Highway 1 on a new, for the time, a new mountain bike, or at the time we called it an all-terrain bike. And there was a tractor trailer logging truck coming down the hill behind me. I could see it off my shoulder. And I knew I've been passed by a number of them, so I knew there was this windsuck that was going to happen. There was no shoulder, so I'm hanging on as hard as I can, trying not to look back, because I didn't want to turn. There's cars coming the other way, and I have to hang on and just wait for this inevitable experience of this truck that's going to come by me. And so as I'm hanging on, I hear it coming. I don't want to look. I can't hear because the wind's blowing, going downhill. And it comes very close to me, doesn't hit me, passes by me. I swerve a little bit. I almost go off the shoulder, but I manage to stay on the paved part of the road. My adrenaline's pumping, and I pull my bike over to the side of the shoulder, and I stop, and I just sort of ask myself, like, what am I doing this for? This is crazy. So back up from when this started. So I'm 19. I had spent the first part of my summer working on a family strawberry farm. My family's here. And saved up my money and wanted to buy a bike. And mountain bikes were a new thing. This was 1985. They didn't really exist much before then. And they didn't really even exist then, but it was the new thing. And I really wanted one. And I saw a picture of a Specialized rock hopper that I really wanted, but I couldn't afford it because it was $1,000. Knew it was $1,000 for a bike, right? But there was a Schwinn dealer that had a kind of a similar bike, but it was called a Sierra. And I could afford that one. It was like $350. And it was a black chrome, really cool color. Like, it was a black, was it chrome? You couldn't really tell, but it was like really intrigued me. And it was 15 speeds, which blew my mind, because at that point, I only knew of 4 bikes. There was just a 1-speed, 3-speed, 5-speed, and a 10-speed, right? So I'd never heard of a 15-speed. So I kind of had to like let that soak in. But it was, in my mind, like, I have to have this bike. And so the sales rep told me this is, their new model, and it's, got all the bells and whistles. They had these Kevlar tires, like Kevlar for the bulletproof vests. These tires are last forever. Drive over broken glass. Like, I don't recommend it, but you could do it. So like I was sold. So I bought the bike, and strawberry season ends kind of in 4th of July, around there. So I knew I had a window of time, and I decided I just wanted to go, just wanted to drive west and see how far I could go. And I had a black Thunderbird, a 1980 Thunderbird, that had headlights that would pop open when you remember when you used to turn on headlights, you used to have to pull a knob. So I had to pull a knob and the headlights would open. It was kind of this cool feature, except one of them didn't open. They just had one would open because I couldn't figure out how to, it just broke and I couldn't fix it. So I had this sort of Cyclops black Thunderbird. I had a friend named Dan, and I invited Dan to go on this trip. And he had another friend that he wanted to visit out in California. So he said, all right, we'll drive out together. And then you can do your bike trip. I can go see my friend and, you know, be a good road trip. So that's what we did. So I loaded up my Schwinn Sierra and Danny, and we drove out and camped along the way, or stayed at a friend's house in the Quad Cities. And then we stayed in Nebraska. And I remember watching a thunderstorm come over the horizon. Like, you're in Kansas, you're probably used to that, but I was in Michigan, like, wow, this is amazing. I can see the lightning. It's not even raining out yet. And then we stayed in Denver, stayed at a friend's mom's house. I remember playing Frisbee at 6,000 feet. I didn't know why I couldn't breathe, but you know, the altitude. And then we ended up one night in Lake Tahoe until we got to San Francisco. And so then we arrived, and he drove me across the bridge, dropped me off in Mill Valley, and he took the car and went south to Los Angeles. And I drove my bike in my yellow windbreaker. I had just a little roll with a sleeping bag and a little plastic tent that didn't have any doors on it, just sort of like a piece of rope that you strung between 2 trees. And I didn't have a bike helmet. Bike helmets were new. I knew I needed to have one. So before the trip, I had bought a used hockey helmet from a garage sale for $5. So I had a Cooper hockey helmet, like black with a little sweat stained chin strap. And so I'm riding on this coastline, which I had in my mind, this beautiful scenic scene, driving up in the coast by myself. You know, this is gonna be great. And it was great, but there's a lot of cars on Highway 1, and you know, this is before the internet, so I knew what I knew, but I figured there'd be a nice shoulder. You know, everybody rides bikes in California. Well, people on Highway 1 are either in a hurry, or there's a lot of hairpin turns, so it's not easy to navigate. There were bikes out. I wasn't the only. I wasn't a complete idiot, but there weren't a lot of people out there on bikes. So I managed to, and this thing's, you know, I don't know how, it was made out of steel, so it's, you know, probably 50 pounds. Like my bike right now is 15 pounds, so it's like, you know, really heavy, weighted down. You know, had these knobby tires, so it wasn't like built for speed at all. It's upright. The handlebars are up. So I'm like a, you know, piece of plywood with, you know, wind brakes. So I'm just kind of like plodding my way along. I didn't really have anywhere to be. I was going to do a kind of a up and back and meet my friend back in San Francisco. My aunt worked for the airlines, and she was staying in San Mateo. We're going to stay with her after the trip. So first night I stay at this youth hostel in Point Reyes, and you know, everything's going okay, pretty well. And then the next day, it's a little bit more challenging. I'm up towards Tomales Bay, and it's you know, a lot of up and down, like the down's fun, unless there's a logging truck coming behind you. But then you got to go back up, and then it's like, it's a lot of work. And I'm like, you know, starting to wonder, like, do I really want to do it? Like in my mind, I thought I'm going to go to Oregon, you know, like after about the second day, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to go to Oregon. So I'm in like maybe Sonoma County, although not that much farther from where I started. And I camped out in that tent with no doors. And you know, if you know California, there's a lot of fog along the coastline. So the next morning, everything's soaking wet, and you can't see very well for a while till the fog burns off around noon. But I was getting less and less enamored with the beauty, and as I get more and more close calls with these kind of hostile drivers, and the windsuck and the no shoulder, and it just wasn't really kind of as magical as I was hoping it was going to be, although it was still fun to think about now, especially. I stayed at a little bed and breakfast, and this is before phones. So I remember calling my mom. I had to like pay the guy like in dollar bills to use his phone to make a long distance phone call. You know, that was like either that or a postcard. You know, I thought I'd just make sure she knows I'm alive, since I almost died when a semi truck just almost hit me. I didn't tell her that part till just now, but sorry, Mom. So at some point I decided I'm gonna like just get back quick, and I don't want to go back on Highway 1. So there's got to be a better way. So this guy at this bed and breakfast, it's like a writer's retreat, tells me just, you know, cut across the state to 101 and you can kind of work your way back there. It's flatter in the valley. So I'm like, all right, that sounds good. So I kind of work my way through wine country, and I see all these, you know, beautiful vineyards, and it does get to be a lot flatter, a lot sunnier, a lot hotter. And then I find that I get to like 101, and I'm used to interstates having like one number, like I-5 or I-75, or, you know, like an I in front of it. So I thought this was just going to be like a highway. Well, so as I get on the on-ramp, it says bicycles are prohibited. And I'm like, well, you know, how they got a big shoulder, like how bad can that be? Like, I'm just going to do this. I don't have to go very far, maybe 50 miles, and I'll be like pretty close. So I get on it, and it's an interstate, and it's a divided highway, and it's like bumper to bumper, 60 miles an hour. And it's like, and there's a shoulder, but you're still getting blown as these trucks are going by. And, you know, I just keep telling myself, like, it's not that much farther. Like, I just got to get back. Like, I just, you know, once you made your mind, if you want to get back, you just got to get back. And so then as I'm riding along, at some point, I realize, like, it's getting kind of soft and sloggy. And I look down and I've got a flat tire. And I'm like, oh, great. So now I got to walk my bike. So I get off and I look, and I've got 2 flat tires. And so I'm walking along, and it's hot, and I'm not quite sure, like, you know, can't call anybody. I don't want to get, you know, attacked by a, you know, be a hitchhiker and get, you know, absconded. So anyway, eventually a VW microbus pulls over, and a dude gets out, and he's like, hey, you know, I see you got, looks like you have some problems, you know, like, you need any help? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to, you know, walk, and like, I don't know what to make of this guy. And he says, you know, well, I can help you fix your tire. Like, you got tools? Like, let me just, you know, like, nope, I don't got tools. And he's like, all right, well, I probably got some tools in my van. You got a spare tire? You know, I can help you fix your tire. I'm like, nope, no spare tire. Okay, they're made out of Kevlar. Like, they're not supposed to. This isn't supposed to happen. So he's like, just get in, just get in. And so he was with his wife and his kids, so I felt pretty safe, even though I thought, you know, this might be the last time I've seen him alive, but, you know, whatever, I don't have many options here. So I get in the van, and he takes me to the locals. I was near Petaluma. He took me to a bike shop in Petaluma. And well, I missed one important point, and I got to get the title of my story. It's called Goat Heads. I forgot to tell you that part. So I don't know if you know what goat heads are. I didn't know what they were, but it's a thorn, and it's the shape of like a goat skull with like the thorn sticking up. And they were all over the expressway, and they're all over like the West. And I'd never heard of them. They're also called puncture vine for a good reason. And they apparently can puncture through Kevlar, which I didn't know, and the bike shop didn't tell me. So that's what happened. I had gone over these goat head thorns, and they were all over my tires, like just, you know, 20 or 30 of them embedded in the thing. So I had no chance. And ended up getting my tires repaired and finished the ride back into San Francisco. I met up with my friend and had a good trip and survived. So so that's it. So the moral of the story, I guess, is, you know, on the highway of life, there's going to be goat heads. But now, like, I bike a lot, and I keep spare tires, and I have tools, and I have air. And the most important bike tool of all, I have my iPhone, which gets me out of a lot of jams if I have them. But if you're really lucky, every once in a while, a guy in a VW bus might come by and save the day. That's my story.
Francisco, you're muted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I'm no longer muted. Okay. Matt, great story. I didn't know what a goat head was. Now it all makes sense. Thank you, appreciate it. Next up is Susan Moore. Susan Moore is David Holland's sister. Are you ready, Susan?
I am.
And the title of Susan's story is, I guess you didn't get my message. And there's, I should say this, there's a little funny anecdote about that, but just when we were organizing the event, I kept asking Susan, please send me the title of your story. And she used to send back more or less, I guess you didn't get my message. And I was struggling with that. I was going through all my emails, through the garbage can, and until I finally, after the 5th time that I asked her, what's the title of your story? And she kept saying the same thing. I figured, oh my God, that is the title of her stories. You didn't get my message. So Susan, glad to have you over. Take it away.
Good Friday evening, everybody. A quick shout out to all of my family members who are on the call. So welcome. Nice to see you all from across the country. I hail from northern Wisconsin, and I'm happy to say we are on the plus side of 0 these days. So that's a good thing. So my story also goes back to the 1980s. In the late 80s, I was a college student at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. For those of you who don't know Wisconsin, that's in the southern part of the state, about midway between Madison and Milwaukee. And at the time, my father had his own business. He was a consultant for healthcare professionals, and he had quite a few clients in the Milwaukee area. So lucky for me, he would come down to see his clients quite frequently and would take me out to dinner, which was a great perk. What college student doesn't like free food? So one day he called me up. It was actually rather last minute. We didn't have this planned. I don't know if he just thought of it last minute or what the reason was, but he called me and he said, I know this is kind of last minute, but would you like to drive over to Milwaukee and meet me for dinner? And it was, I don't know, maybe 45-minute hour drive. So not too far. I really didn't have anything going on. So I said, sure. Well, we had been getting together for meals for, a couple of years, and there are some really nice restaurants in Milwaukee. That's one thing I miss living way up here in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. We really don't have a lot of culinary variety, shall we say. It's a supper club after supper club. But I do have a lot of memories of these meals. He would take me to these fine dining restaurants, and we would have these amazing meals. And my father was and is really big into wine. He's always had an over-the-top wine cellar, wine collection. In fact, I remember him making wine when we were kids. I remember him soaking bottles of wine in the sink all the time because he saved every label from every bottle of wine he ever had and put it in a book, and he would write down where he bought it, what he paid for it, what it smelled like, tasted like when he opened it, the whole shebang. So he's really, really into wine. So these dinners are always a lot of fun because they were, fine dining foods that maybe I haven't had before. And then obviously exposure to all these fine wines. So back in the day, at that time, the drinking age was 18 when I was in high school. And then just before I turned 18, it switched to 19. And so I was able to drink at the age of 19, and then it did switch to 21, but I was grandfathered in. So even though I was only, in college, I was able to enjoy this wine with him. So he calls me up and says, we're gonna have dinner, but he says, we're not gonna go to an expensive place this time. We'll just, just go to a restaurant. I said, no problem, Dad. I didn't expect him to drop hundreds of dollars every time we had dinner together. I just was thankful for the time with him. And like I said, free meal. So I drove over to Milwaukee, and unlike Matt, I didn't have a cool car with cool headlights. I actually had a Ford Fairmont, a 4-door Ford Fairmont, and it was, swear to God, it was peach with an orange pinstripe. And we called it the Peachmobile, and it had an AM radio. And the only saving grace was that, well, I guess it ran, which, I guess any college student is happy to have a car that runs. But it also had air conditioning, which was awesome because I really do not like the heat. So I got into my Peachmobile and I drove over and met my dad. And he was staying at a hotel in downtown Milwaukee called the Pfister Hotel, which is a very nice hotel, in its day and still is today. And I met him in the lobby. And again, as my cousin referenced, we did not have cell phones at that time. So there was no such thing as sending, someone a quick text. And I walk into the lobby and my dad sees me and he just has this look on his face like, oh my God. And I'm looking at him and I said, what? He's like, I guess you didn't get my message, huh? And I'm like, what message? He's like, well, I changed my mind about where we're going to have dinner. I said, okay. He says, well, we're going to eat here at the Pfister Hotel. They had a restaurant there. I think it was called the English Room. Very, very fine dining experience. And I'm a college student whose father called her up last minute and said, come meet me for dinner. So I didn't put a lot of thought into what I was wearing, right? So again, it's the late 80s. Mind you, I looked a lot different than I did back then than I do now. I certainly could not pull off this outfit today. But if you can imagine, I am standing in the lobby of this very fine hotel with my father wearing a white tight knit mini skirt and a black tank top. And then over that is this huge red oversized shirt with these big square metallic buttons. So think of, like Francisco was talking about, music and how people dress back then. So I had this big oversized shirt and then these little flat, black shoes on. And I will tell you that there were a lot of people giving us looks. And I don't think that a single person in that entire lobby thought that that was my father. So he tells me that we're going to the English Room. And I said, well, sorry, Dad, I don't have a change of clothes with me. I didn't plan on spending the night. I was just driving over to have dinner and going back to school. So we go to the English Room and we walk up to the host stand, and it's a gentleman literally in a black tux, and I'm just like dying. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm dressed like this. And we're going into this restaurant, and my dad looks at the guy and he's like, sorry, she's my daughter. She didn't know that we were going to dinner here. He's like apologizing for the way I'm dressed. And he just kind of looks at us, very confused that I'm dressed the way I am presenting to this restaurant. And he says that's okay, sir, no problem. And he promptly takes the two of us back to like the very back corner of the restaurant to this table where like nobody else can see us, and seats us at this table for our meal. And we go on to have like the most incredible meal. And like I said, my dad is really into wine. So I hate saying the word sommelier, so I'm just going to call him the wine dude. But the wine dude and my dad became best buds. And we started out the night, and this was not uncommon for us. We started out with like a split bottle of champagne, with an appetizer. And I remember very specifically, I had lobster bisque with that meal, and I love lobster bisque. And this was absolutely to die for bisque. And then there we moved on to, to a bottle of white wine, and then we moved on to a bottle of red wine, and then we went on to a dessert wine, and we had an absolute blast, as we always do. My dad is a conversationalist, and, he and this guy, the wine dude, start talking about wine. My dad's been to, Napa Valley too many times to count. And in fact, we were all convinced when he retired, he would open up a wine store someday. And he didn't, but he still drinks his fair share of wine. So we have this wonderful meal with all of these wonderful wines. And my dad is so impressed with some of these wines that he decides he wants to buy a couple of bottles to take home, which is really something, because we all know that you pay a lot more for wine in a restaurant than you do in the store. So he tells the guy that, I think it was the white and the red maybe. And so we're sitting there, finishing up our meal. And of course, we're, totally snookered at this point after, drinking all of this wine. And the wine dude comes by and he puts the two bottles of wine on the seat next to my dad. And we were talking at the time, and he must not have been paying much attention, my father. And all of a sudden he looks at me, totally dazed and confused. He's like, oh my God, look what the wine dude brought me. I think he totally forgot they'd asked him to buy these extra bottles of wine. I think he thought it was just a gift, and it wasn't. But that may be, if you account for inflation, very possibly the most expensive meal that I think I have ever had in my life, and one of the most fun and fond memories I have with my father. So I ended up spending the night at the Pfister with him. I certainly wasn't going to drive the Peachmobile back to Whitewater after all of that wine. And I will say that the next morning, while I was, a bit dazed by my hangover, I am not at all confused about, why we went ahead and drank that much, because it was a heck of a lot of fun. And I have a lot of really great memories with my dad. So thank you, Dad.
That was awesome. Thank you, Susan. That was great.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it makes you lament the fact that there were no wine folks who could take a picture of that outfit. You showed it to your kids.
It was something.
That's a great story. All right. So next up is Tim. Wait a second. We have some impromptu stories. Remember what when I started the whole thing? There were long story, 5 to 8 minutes, and then there were impromptu. So we got a couple of them. We're going to get the first one out now, which is Jessica. And then we're going to go to Tim, who's the main storyteller, then Ben, and then Cecilia out of Connecticut. Good for you. So lots to look forward to. So Jessica, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Let it flow.
All right. Doing multiple tasks here, so give me just a second. All right. So, hi all. Thanks. I feel like I need to thank everyone while I am present and in front of you all for joining us for Story Slam. We appreciate you and appreciate all your support of what we do. So my story, didn't title it, just came up with it a little bit earlier today. So here I go. It's a beautiful early spring day. The sun's shining, birds are chirping, and I'm running 1,000,000 miles an hour, seizing the opportunity to use up every ounce of my motivation. I'm talking doing all of the things in one day. Because you know how it is when you're a mom of 3 and living life, living the dream. So I get the kids to school, back home to clean the house, then I'm to Lawrence to run errands, home again to put groceries away, with now 20 minutes left before I need to pick up the kids from school. I'm out the door to gather them from 3 different places. Last one buckled in, and we're off to accomplish a couple more errands, which is why we luckily live in a small town, and all those things are 3 blocks from each other. All small towns are awesome. So I'm back in the van to City Hall to pay the utility bill, insurance company to drop off some paperwork. I've been in and out of my van so many times that day, my head is spinning. And all I can think about is getting home to my nice clean house, opening a bottle of wine, and relishing in my accomplished day. One last stop to check the P.O. box at the post office. I pull up, jump out, grab my mail, back in the van, and I'm looking around. Why isn't my van still running? Where's my purse? Where are my 3 kids? What is happening right now? I mentally slow down enough to take inventory of my surroundings and realize this is not my van. I look through the passenger window and see my 3 kids sitting in my van, laughing hysterically at me, parked right next to me in the exact make, model, color of van I am sitting in. I quickly get out of the vehicle that doesn't belong to me, only to meet the owner of said vehicle. And we shared an amazing laugh as I explained what I had done. As I walk around and open my door to the laughter of my children, I get in and we go home in my sheer embarrassment and their sheer enjoyment of my humanity. And I go home and I open my bottle of wine and I sit down and I shake my head and just my sheer dazed and confused moment. Thank you. Francisco, you're
Thank
muted.
you, Susan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love the story. I had a similar one, but I'll save that for some other time. It's incredible when you mess up the cars, and I had nobody watching me when I did mine, but I can relate to it. Nice story. All right. So next story is from Tim Moore, and that's David's brother-in-law. So this is cool. We got a couple. We had Susan Moore first, and now we have Tim Moore. And actually, Matt Meyer was David's cousin. I forgot to mention that. It looks like I'm enjoying myself a little too much here. So I shouldn't, I should do a better job. So please forgive me there. So, cheers.
Francisco, read the bio for Tim, please.
I sure will. Thanks for reminding me. Tim Moore, husband of Susan and brother-in-law to David, and have quite a reputation of telling stories, particularly of the comedic type. In addition, what is it? Oh my
To
God.
talking.
To talking, I like odd sound effects as appropriate. That is very cool. I read this early and I loved it. When doing our nightly story, when putting our boys to bed, I developed quite the skill of making the sound of a helicopter. Will I not be able to replicate the dude in the police academy? Try it, man, try it. I can hold my own. Per my wife, I'm quite the embellisher. However, I can assure you that while names may change to protect the innocent, okay, I can assure the stories are about to share are true. Awesome, looking forward to it. Go ahead, Tim.
All right. I'm gonna do a little different format than what everybody else has done. I have just a few stories that I'm just gonna kind of spew out kind of quickly. I'm not gonna embellish too much because I hear about it all the time. So if you want the embellishments, well, one day I'll write a book about it, I'm told. So let's start out. I've been a paramedic since the 1980s, and I was working in mid-Michigan for quite some time, and I was looking for something a little more exciting to do. So I landed a private contract with a company in Saudi Arabia to go work in an emergency department over there as a paramedic. So gearing up, as you probably know, some of you do anyway, that people that work in emergency medical services tend to let loose a lot. So in preparation for leaving, I spent a couple of days with no sleep, anticipating the 17-plus-hour trip over to Saudi Arabia. And I figured I'd just sleep all the way over. So get to the airport, hop on the plane. I'm the only American on the plane. It's a huge plane. And apparently everybody's going back to Saudi Arabia. It's a pleasant flight, first hour or so. I drift off to sleep. It was an afternoon flight. It's getting dark. I sleep for a couple hours, and I think I wake up, and I look around, and I'm the only one on the plane. And we're just flying along. I don't see a stewardess. The people in the seats next to me aren't there. What the hell's going on here? So I couldn't see anybody. So I just went back to sleep. I thought, well, maybe this is part of a dream. I went back to sleep. Don't know how much longer I slept for. Woke up, still nobody. And it's like, what the hell is going on? And same thing, went back to sleep, slept a little bit, wake up, still nobody there. Well, now I'm into where I got to go to the bathroom. So at least I think I have to go to the bathroom. So I stand up, and I take a step over, and I trip over a kid who's sleeping underneath the seat. So now I'm really confused, and I look out into the aisle, and everybody on the plane is laying on the floors, under the seats, in the aisles, sleeping. I don't know what to do. There's no way I'm going to get to the bathroom. So I sit down and figure I'm just going to hold it. I eventually go back to sleep. When I wake up, everybody's back in their seats again. So I thought I'm paying for what I did the 2 days before I left. Too much partying, too much drinking. My mind's playing tricks on me. Get to the airport, of course, and I'm just about knocking old ladies down to get to the bathroom. That's pretty much the start of my year-long trip into Saudi Arabia. I get to the hospital where I'm supposed to be. They don't give me much of a break. I get a couple hours sleep, go into the emergency room. I'm working the night shift. I'm there for a couple, 2-3 hours, and people are kind of orienting me to things. And they say, you got to watch out for Dr. Burlinson because he's kind of a weird duck. He does some strange things sometimes. And so I was just checking this guy out. He's an English guy. He looks a little off, a little strange, but pleasant enough. About two-thirds of the way into the night, the guy that I'm working with says, why don't you go out in the lobby and sleep for a little while? Nothing's going on. Try to catch up on your sleep. So I go out and I find this bench and I'm laying on this bench and I drift off to sleep and I hear this noise like cars going over the rumble strips, but really fast, like, and then long pause, maybe 3-4 minutes, and then I hear it again, and I sit up and I, what the hell's going on? And I look up, and here comes Dr. Burlinson on his mountain bike down the escalator, weaving between the trees in the lobby, and then grabbing onto the handrail and riding the escalator up the other side and repeating, coming back down. So I don't know what to think. Go back to sleep. End of the shift, I mentioned something to the guy that I was working with, and he says, we don't know what you're talking about. And that was the end of that. I never saw him do anything else weird. It was just a bizarre thing I saw. Finished out the year there with some other strange stories, but that's for another time. In 1996, I got a call from a guy that I used to work with that recommended me to another guy to do another contract position working as a paramedic in the country of Brunei, which is in the island of Borneo. It's a little tiny country, the size of Delaware. At one point, it was considered one of the richest countries in the world. The Sultan, it's a monarchy. The Sultan of Brunei at one point was the richest man in the world. And I think Bill Gates took him out in the early 90s. It still remains big in money, gas and oil. Anyway, I was hired to fly over there and work as a traveling paramedic for the Sultan and the royal family of Brunei. Again, long flight, get over there. I get there early morning. They figure they might as well introduce me to the ER staff. I go to the ER and I look out on the beach and there's all these horses run up and down the beach. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat. And they tell me that the Sultan's into polo, really big. And the guys that take care of the horses every morning, they run these 100 or so horses up and down the beach and they go into the water and cool off. They said, why don't you go out and check it out? So I go out there, I'm walking around and I hear this noise in the distance and I'm not quite sure what it is. I hear this noise and it's getting louder and louder and closer and closer. And I turn around just in time to see this giant yellow helicopter coming at me about 30 feet off the ground with this kid in the passenger seat and his dad flying the thing, who happened to be Prince Jeffrey, and his son, the other prince. He puts his head out the window as he turns and kind of does a loop around me with a giant smile on his face and just flies by, does a couple circles around me and then takes off. I later learned that the kid got this helicopter for his 16th birthday and his dad was just taking him out and flying him around. I got there, that was the end of the year. Again, more confusion over what's going on. And this next bit of the story that continues on with my stay in Brunei was with confusion on somebody else's part. It was coming up to the New Year's Eve party where the Sultan had hired Michael Jackson to come and put a show on at the Royal Brunei Polo Club, which was the basis for the whole hospital and everything out in the middle. It was on the South China Sea, right on the beach. It was gorgeous. Our job for that night was to be at the stage front in case any of the party goers that were at the concert had a medical emergency, needed some help. So we go to the concert. I never was a fan of Michael Jackson until I saw this concert. It was amazing. The guy was quite the performer. After the concert, there was to be like an after party for the people that arranged the concert, the Sultan, all the royal family and whatnot. But we were asked if we wanted to partake in any of the food before the royal family came in. Well, I've always been a big food guy. My GI tract doesn't really appreciate some of the things I eat, but I partook in a lot of the food that was there, stuff I'd never had before and tried. And then we left. We're in the emergency room back at work, and we get a phone call that says, Michael Jackson's coming into the emergency room. He's going to be brought into the back door. He needs IV hydration. He got dehydrated during the show. He needs a couple of liters of fluid. So my partner says, you know, I'll go to the back door and I'll let him in and I'll take him up to the room and I'll meet you there. I said, okay. So he takes off. Meanwhile, my stomach's rumbling and grumbling and making noise. And I was, boy, this isn't good. And I feel like I'm at the point of no return where I've got to get to a bathroom. I take off running down the hall. And as I round the corner, I meet chest to chest with Michael Jackson and hit him up against the wall. And I said, oh my God, I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. I'm going to shit my pants. And I took off and ran to the bathroom. And he just looked at me and they walked away. And about 20 minutes later, I walk into the ER where he's at in a private room. And my partner's got the IV started on him. And he's just sitting there. And I poke my head in the door. And I said, I apologize again, Mr. Jackson. I'm really sorry. He says, I don't just about shit my pants. And he said, that's fine. That's fine. And I walked out. Well, I got a lot of crap from a lot of people about that. And to this day, I don't know if he thought I was shitting my pants because I saw him or because I was actually going to shit my pants. And that's my story. If you got time, I got one more quick one. Polo was a big thing in Brunei. Everybody played polo. The Sultan played polo.
Tim,
Yes.
sorry, we're gonna move. We have about 20 minutes and several other stories.
Okay, I don't want to take it away. Okay,
Thank you, Tim.
Save
Sure.
that one for a later date.
I will do that.
Thank you. That was awesome. What a great story. Wow. You know, you actually came right, you're not Michael Jackson then. That's it. That's awesome. Good story. Next one up is Bent Yunt. And I'm going to read it. I'm going to try to do my job here. I'm going to try to stick to the script. Bent Yunt. He is a dentist in California. There he is right there. You can see him. And between patients, he likes to work some stories. He has been a lifelong reader. And ever since he can remember, he's been making stories. And hopefully one day he'll be a published storyteller. That is fantastic. Great to have you, Ben. Go ahead, take it away.
All right, so this story is titled The Summer of '96, and it's dedicated to my mom. So, and there I was all alone in my room for an entire summer. I was a teenager trying to find myself, trying to find acceptance, and to think it began with a relic from my mom's past just blows my mind. Oh man, you guys are getting me. I really can't remember this summer. I was totally dazed and confused, but I know that it happened. And I remember the door being closed quite a bit to my bedroom. Leading up to this summer, I'd been bullied a lot. I was a big kid. My mom said I was big boned, and I was a good student, maybe too good. I was always the first to raise my hand in class. And after school was out, I'd stay and talk with my teachers. And once I left, the halls were seemingly empty, but the tough kids were in the shadows waiting for me, and they'd taunt me, call me names, they'd push me against the wall, they'd spit in my face, I'd cry, and they wouldn't stop. Pretty soon I'd be on the ground and they'd be kicking me. So I raised my hand less, and I didn't visit with my teachers anymore. And as soon as the bell rang, I ran home, and there I'd be in the safety of my bedroom, building Revell model kits, maybe a Lego set, and also getting to know my mom. She told me when she was young that she played the electric guitar. I thought that was so cool. One night after supper, my sister and I were sitting at the table with our parents, and they told us that they were getting a divorce. I knew what this meant, but I didn't want to. I tried to sweet talk them the way I'd sweet talked my teachers, but no matter what I said, they'd made up their minds. And a couple of days later, my mom told me that we were moving. And I was devastated, but at the same time, I knew that I wasn't going to be bullied anymore. So she said that we're going to turn a new leaf with a new life. So we got to our new home. The moving van came. The furniture came off the van boxes, and emerged this black slender case. And I brought it to my new room, and I undid the latches. And inside was my mom's electric guitar. The amplifier quickly found the corner of my bedroom, and I was strumming away, but I didn't know what I was doing. So my mom took me to the local music store. She got it restrung, and she even got me a lesson. My guitar instructor's name was Juliet Thomas, and she taught me how to hold the guitar properly. And she told me where to put my fingers on the fretboard. And she taught me my first guitar riff. It was Nirvana's Come As You Are. I played that song over and over again, memorizing it, and guaranteed I could have played it in my sleep. On Fridays, my mom would take us to our dad's. He'd always get a takeout pizza, and we'd go to the video store, and we'd each get to pick a movie. Those weekends with him seemed so short, and then we'd be back at our mom's. And after school, I was racing home, only this time I wasn't running away from something. I was running towards something. I wanted to play guitar, and I kept going to my lessons, and the more I played, the faster I became. And then Friday would come around again. We go to our dad's, we get the pizza, we get the movie. But on this Friday, I somehow meandered to the documentary section, and I'm still not sure if I found this video or if it found me. It was called Guitar Heroes, and it began with the lead guitarist of the fictitious band Spinal Tap. And he was in a room full of guitars, and along the walls were all the amplifiers. And he walked up to one of them and he said, "All speaker setups go up to volume 10, but mine, they go up to 11. It was the sort of fiction that I totally connected with. And in the next scene, Carlos Santana came on, and he played guitar as if the guitar had a voice in the song Black Magic Woman. And I was so honored that night while playing in my room. I turned up the volume just a little bit louder. And then, at school, I made new friends. One of them suggested we go to Tower Records. And so we hopped on our silver BMX bikes and we rode there. And at the Ticketmaster counter, I saw that Santana was coming to town. So I told my mom, and a few days later we had tickets. So she took me and one of my friends to our first concert. We sat down in the amphitheater, and there was like figures on the stage, and then the band came out and they started to play, and they contorted their voices as they were playing, and they looked at each other, and I could like not only hear the passion that they had for what they were doing, but I could feel the passion they had. And Carlos Santana was the band leader as well as the lead guitarist, and he was without a doubt a guitar hero. I told my guitar instructor, and she taught me Santana's songs. I had more material, and more time was spent in my room playing guitar. In the past, I'd been such a good student, but I was crazy about guitar. I viewed school as getting in the way of my playing, and the way the bullies picked on me, the way they picked me out of the crowd, I now chose who I hung out with, and I only had time for musicians. My hair was getting long. My fingers were becoming calloused, and if I wanted to play loud, I realized that I had to get a different guitar. So I worked at a pizza parlor. I played in a band. I had a girlfriend, and every dollar I made, I saved for thin necklaces for her and for my future guitar. And if I told my mom what I wanted to do, she would have got it for me, and I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. I wanted to get it for myself, and it had to be a guitar worthy of a guitar hero. So I started going to different music shops, playing different guitars. And on one of them, in one of the shops, there was a plaque on the wall. It said "No Stairway." I didn't know what that meant, but I quickly realized that it was in reference to the song "Stairway to Heaven" by Led Zeppelin. It was one of the most overplayed songs on the radio at the time, and every guitarist across the globe knew it by heart. I was a fast learner. I learned it quickly. And then I learned Zeppelin's other songs. And I admired their guitarist, Jimmy Page, to the point that I emulated him. I had my hair down to past my shoulders. I studied how he moved on stage, and I figured out his favorite guitar. if rock and roll were a church, then Jimmy Page was its highest priest. I had to have a guitar just like his. And during my senior year of high school, I saved up enough money and I bought it. So during that summer, the summer I didn't leave my room, the summer I stayed inside, played in and day out. My mom, every now and then, my sister, they'd leave, and I crank up the amplifier to 11. And a lot of things had changed. I wasn't the bully boy anymore. My parents were separated, but I never came from a broken home. And my friends, they accepted me. And my mom, well, she was always there for me, making my dreams come true. She, the way she'd gotten the guitar restrung, the way she got me lessons, the way she got me tickets to see Santana. She got us tickets to see Jimmy Page live in concert. He played all the ballads, all the rock anthems. And on the very last song, he took the guitar we had and he used a bow and he played it like an electric violin. And it made these wicked sounds, these sounds that still emanate through my core to this day. And it wasn't Stairway to Heaven he was playing. The song, it was just like, the title was just like the trance I'd been in that summer, and it was titled Dazed and Confused. So thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. I mean, Ben, I'm sorry. Cheers. You know, one of the sad things about Story Slam is that, and one of the great things is that with these virtual sessions, we got people from all over the country. And I don't know how we're going to work it out when things get back to normal. You know, I'm going to miss that. You know, we got people from Wisconsin, we're going to have people from Connecticut, whatever. So, you know, we're going to have to find a way to make that out. Ben, love your story. You know, I can totally relate to it, as you can imagine. You know, I started the Story Slam with Dazed and Confused, a little riff there. So cheers to you, man. Thank you so much. That was awesome. So next one up is Cecilia. Cecilia Foster. Are you on? I can see you. Let me tell you a little bit about Cecilia. Cecilia is my sister-in-law. And this is one of the things that I'm going to miss about when we go back from COVID, you know, because I don't know how we're going to work out, get people from Connecticut into the show and so on. So,
you might have to turn the volume up here.
Can you hear me okay?
There's a little echo there somewhere. I don't know where it's coming from.
I think I fixed it. Can you hear me okay now?
You definitely fixed it. Yeah. So Cecilia, like I said before, she's my sister-in-law, and she's coming to you from Connecticut. Very happy to have her on board here, and looking forward to hearing her impromptu story. So go ahead, Cecilia.
Okay, so my story is about being dazed and confused a bit, related to Francisco.
Cecilia, so sorry. Do you have the Story Slam somewhere else in the house?
Yeah.
Turn that off, because we're getting a lot of reverb from that, love.
Okay. All right, how about now?
Still on. You
Okay.
end whatever else it is that you're doing.
Okay, how about now?
The joys of virtual world. You did good. Go for it, girlfriend.
Oh no.
You're good. Go for it.
Hold on.
No, unmute.
Go for it. You're in the Grand Canyon. No problem. Go ahead.
You're great. Unmute. I would do it for you if I could. There you go. All right.
Can you hear me now?
You're good.
I don't think it's gonna work.
It will work. Come on. We'll wait for you.
I don't think she can hear us for some reason.
Oh.
You're free. Oh, go. Your story.
All right. So, while Cecilia gets,
Mommy what you were going to say, though.
yeah, the tech is. You know.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Oh, there you go. There you are.
Oh,
Right
great,
there.
good. Okay,
Good,
here's the
good,
story.
good.
I'm going to tell it really quick. So, this is a story of when I was in grad school, and what Francisco didn't tell you, he said I was his sister-in-law, but he didn't tell you I was first his friend. So we all hung out together in grad school, a bunch of us. And I was married. I got married in grad school to a group, part of our group, what was my husband. And Francisco was a good friend of all of us. And I got pregnant, and on purpose, yeah. So that was a whole nother story. But basically what happened was I was expecting my sister Valerie to come. She told me she was going to come to be there when my baby was born. And my mom says to me, "Don't you know any good guys to introduce your sister to?" And what you need to know about my sister is my sister had guys chasing her all the time. She's gorgeous now, and she was always gorgeous, and she's just more gorgeous on the inside than the outside. So she was always having all these guys around her, after her. So my mom says, "Don't you know any nice guys to introduce to your sister?" So I'm like, first thing I come to mind, Francisco. Francisco would be a perfect guy for my sister. So I call up my sister and I'm like, "Hey, Val, can I introduce you to my friend?" She's like, "No way. No, I am not being set up. No blind dates for me. I don't do that." So I'm like, "Okay, well, we'll see." So I call up Francisco, or I think back then was the very beginning of email maybe. And I say to him, "Would you be interested in meeting my sister?" And he's like, "Yes." So I go back to my sister and I start trying to do a negotiation. So I think, okay, Valerie, how about just coffee? Would you be willing to go to coffee with my friend? And so she's like, "Okay, I'll go for a coffee." So I go back to Francisco and I say, "Okay, hey, Francisco, how about just going to a coffee?" And he's like, "Okay." So then he sends me a questionnaire about my sister. And it starts asking me all these questions. Does she like to dance? Does she like music? Will she eat meat? Oh, because his ex-girlfriend was vegetarian and he was done with that. And it's funny because his daughter is now trying to do that. So anyway, so then all these questions, hilarious. So I have to write this whole questionnaire of all these like background questions on my sister. Meanwhile, my sister's not even sure she wants to even go for a coffee. And then what happened was my son decided to be a little late, and he was born like 5 days late. And I was ended up in the hospital when everybody came to the house. And apparently my sister is who answered the door when Francisco came down we were living in Tucson and he was up in Phoenix. And he came down from Phoenix to meet my son. But my sister answered the door because we were still in the hospital. We weren't home yet. So then what happened was I get home from the hospital with my newborn son, which they had both come to meet. And I walk in the door with my baby and they're like this, just like talking. They look over at me and they're like, "Oh, hi, nice baby." Back to talking. So I'm so confused, like what's going on? And then I realized there is a lot of dazed behavior going on over there. So we proceeded to have a wonderful time after we came home. And a lot of it was really kind of watching Francisco and Valerie just pretty much fall in love right in front of us. And it was so cool. Francisco decides to call his boss because he's such a good guy. He calls his boss and he says, "Hey, I'm not coming into work. I met a girl." So, who does that? And his boss says to him, "You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say you're sick or something." But anyway, so that's my story of how Francisco and Val met.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you.
I
Yeah,
can't hear him.
you can't hear me? Can everybody else hear me?
Yeah, you're good. She had to shut her other device. She was listening
Okay.
to one and videoing from another.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of like how it went down. So 20 years later, 2 kids later, I'm here in Lawrence, and I'm happy. So that's good. So thank you, Cecilia. Next storyteller is Ray Lauber. And here comes the bio. Ray's storytelling started very early in life, as his dad was a typical Kansas fisherman who never let the facts get in the way of a good story. Gotta love that. Mix in being the middle child and a speech and debate kid, a role-playing Dungeons and Dragons, that's what D&D means, I guess, and Star Trek nerd, and having chosen to work in human research, no amount of preparation could have readied him for the world for this. Sorry, I mumble jumble that, but hey, Ray, go for it. You're on.
All good. Thank you very much. So I come by storytelling a little bit honestly here. And so for whatever that happens to be worth, if you come to the Lauber family get-togethers, one of the things that you're going to quickly realize is that they're full of storytelling. And oftentimes it's the rehashing of the same stories kind of over and over and over. And most of them are super duper silly kind of stories. Actually, we like to think of them as the things that legends are made out of, right? So for instance, my mom, my dad, my aunt, and my uncle were actually driving through Kansas City one time, and my mom was looking at all the things kind of going on, and she says, "Wow, would you look at that red car?" They happen to be driving past this large parking lot full of course, red cars. And my dad and my uncle look at each other, and they're like, "Wait, what?" To which my aunt says, "Oh yeah, that's a really cool car." I mean, how does that even happen? How do you even get to a space where a parking lot full of red cars, and the two sisters are able to figure that out? Sometimes though, being dazed and confused isn't just about the silliness of it, but it's also about kind of the shock, right? So my grandmother was a daughter of a Quaker minister. She was a very kind, loving woman. She was very proper. She was an incredible cookie maker, which was awesome. She never said a bad word, never ever. So as I was growing up and I learned to drive, I would actually take her to her hair appointments. We lived out on a farm. We would drive into the great metropolis of Osage City here in Kansas. She would get her hair done. While she was getting her hair done, I would actually take her car and I would wash it and I would detail it. And there was this one time she was so excited I picked her up, and she was just over the top about how beautiful the car looked and how amazing it looked, like it was brand new again. She was so very happy. And so we stopped and she did her shopping. We get everything loaded up. We head back out to the farm. I pull the car into the parking lot. And all of a sudden I hear my grandmother, who never says anything bad. She says, well, and I'm like, "Grandma, are you okay? What's going on?" And she says, "Well, some bird just shit down the side of my window." And I'm like, "What? Wait, what? Grandma, you don't say things like that." And her response is, "What would you call it?" Sometimes being dazed and confused, actually, it's about honesty, right? So my wife and I were coming back from Colorado. We were out in the middle of Western Kansas. She actually was driving. We're on our way back from our honeymoon. I was actually falling asleep. And one of the things to know about my wife, and Corinne can attest to this, she is not a pun sort of person. That's just not sort of her thing. So we're driving back from Colorado, and I'm just on the edge of that drool down the side of your face as you're riding in a car. And she says, "It's not funny." I'm like, what? She's like, "It's not funny. That's not funny." I'm like, "What are you talking about? We haven't said anything for the last almost 15 minutes. What's not funny?" She's like, "Two men walk into a bar, the third one ducks. That's not funny." I'm like, wait, what? That was like a year ago that I told you that joke. Where are we at now? And of course, when I told her the joke, she's like, "What? Wait, what? What?" Because again, she doesn't do puns. So, the thing about all of this is that sometimes dazed and confused situations, you get a 2 for 1, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much. All right.
Hey,
So,
Francisco.
yeah.
Francisco, don't bother reading my bio. It's boring. And we're so late. I'll just go right into my story. Hi, everybody.
Wow, you're making it easy for me. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, we don't
Well, good.
need to hear
Go
all
ahead.
about that. I just gonna
Irene
tell my
King, everybody.
story. Hello, everyone. I'm your last hurrah.
Hold on,
So,
you messed up my flow, clicking on stuff. Just hang tight there. Where'd you go? There you
all
are.
right,
All right.
okay. I gotta show you this little picture here. This is what this is who the story is about right here. So my mom, that's my mom. She was a storyteller, not a professional one, but she repeated stories my entire life. Most of them were sad childhood tales. We heard them over and over again, whether we wanted to or not. And most of her stories were about being neglected or unaffirmed or not being told she was pretty and things like that. So really, clearly, my mom had a lot of unresolved issues. So I reflected on some of the stories that my mom mentioned most often, but there was this specific one that stood out to me. And it was about a time when she was a little girl, and my grandmother, her mother was an extraordinary homemaker, very, very organized. And one time she stepped into my mother's bedroom and opened my mom's dresser drawer and discovered that everything was in total disarray as usual. And so very disgusted, my grandma then scolds her and says something like, "Oh, Marilyn, what are we going to do with you?" Instead of saying, "Marilyn, why don't we go through your dresser drawer together and I'll teach you how to organize it." So something in that moment was freeze framed in my mother's mind, in her soul. And so I think she got the idea that stuck with her, that she was disorganized and was destined to be disorganized. And that was a very shameful thing, and there was no hope for it. And so she just became helpless. Oftentimes, when I grew up, I would see my mom with this kind of dazed and confused look. She'd be lying on the couch and she would say things. She would just say, "I'm so overwhelmed." And yet she was a full-time homemaker. She didn't have a job outside of the home. She really didn't come to any of my school events. So I never understood why she was so overwhelmed. And then whenever my mom and dad would leave for a vacation, my grandma would come and stay with us for a week or two. And she was awesome. She would cook and bake and all this. And we loved having her there because she would clean up my mother's mess. I mean, she would clean up the whole house and reorganize everything. And one time I heard her mutter as she was organizing these piles of folded towels into a linen closet. I heard my grandma say, "Oh, Marilyn, what am I going to do with you?" And so anyway, so my childhood recollections includes all these snapshots of my mom lying on the couch in this state of overwhelm, and chaos in my household was very normal. In fact, sadly, it was kind of a contributing factor to the end of my mom and dad's marriage. But the divorce that they went through forced my mom off the couch. She got a job as a real estate agent. She raised my younger brother and sister on her own, while the other three of us were off to college. Well, fast forward several years later to right after Dances with Wolves, the epic film that we all love. My little brother and sister had come to visit me, and now I'm a mother myself. My little sister and little brother and I were all sitting on the couch, or excuse me, not sitting on the couch, we're sitting on the carpet while my mom was there lying on my couch. Suddenly, my little brother, Mark, he says, "Hey, I got this a great idea. Why don't we go around the room and everybody come up with a name for one another, kind of like in the Dances with Wolves, Dances with Wolves, Dance with a Fist. Let's see, what was another one? Wind in His Hair." And so my mom, she jumps right on it. She goes, "I've got one. I've got one for Corrine. Must have own way." And I thought, what? I didn't see that coming. My gosh. So I see my mom lying on the couch, and I'm like, okay, I got one for mom. Lies on couch. My mom bursts into sobs as my brother and sister look at me with glaring eyes. And I realized I really bombed it, and I struck a nerve in my mother that hit real deep shame in her. So 13 years after my mom and dad got divorced, my mom found love again. She got remarried. She continued working as a real estate agent. She managed 2 antique booths. And then when she was 72 years old, she got breast cancer. And I figured that once this happened, this kind of fixed state of helplessness in her that I still thought she had, I fully expected that she would need a lot of handholding from me. And so I went with her to her first chemotherapy appointment. That was the last, because she said, "I'm fine, I can do this on my own." I was surprised. And then over the next decade, my mother's cancer ended up giving her a lot of plot twists, but she never once complained or asked for pity. And in the midst of it all, she managed her antique booths, and sadly, she continued to accumulate more and more stuff. She bought and sold all the time. And so it became increasingly undesirable to visit my mother's home because of all the possessions she had. And she even one time she said, or more than once, she said she wondered why people didn't come visit her anymore. And I didn't have the heart to tell her why. And I remember during that time, my sister and I, or my siblings and I, would often say, "My gosh, we dread the day our mom passes away because we're going to inherit this ginormous mess. None of us want to have to deal with all her possessions." 3 stories worth of just packed full possessions. We didn't want to deal with it. Well, then one day, the miraculous happened. At the age of 80, my mother got off the proverbial couch, and with very little assistance from any of us, she moved from her home that she had lived in for 45 years and upsized with her second husband to a glorious new home, sold most everything off at an auction, donated to local charities, had people haul it off. And I remember her words. She said, "I want my children to be proud of me." But at that time, I didn't really get it, because I still had her lying on the couch in my mind. That was fixated in my mind, and in my mind, I'm thinking, "I'm not really that proud of you. I love you, but I'm not proud of you necessarily." And then over the next 2 years, after she moved to this new home and dealt with this miraculous thing, her cancer spread through her body. And I insisted that she make a will. She hadn't made a will yet either, had ignored that her whole adult life. And then at the insistence of my sister and I, she decided she'd make a will. And 4 months later, she passed away. It was after my mom passed away that her words really struck me to the core, that she wanted her children to be proud of her. Because it was after she was gone that I realized that my beautiful mother did not leave me with a legacy of helplessness, but she demonstrated to me that it's never too late to get off the couch, and it's never too late to make your children proud. And I hope she knows that. And this is my mom and I don't know if you can see that, but it's my eye. Okay, it's not the best, but it's never too late to get off the couch. The end.
Thank you, Kareem. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hit right there. That counts. So, hey, everyone. So we reached the end of Story Slam of this Dazed and Confused edition. I'd like to thank Matt Mayer, Susan Moore, Tim Moore, Ben Yunt, Ray Lauber, Karen King, Jessica, there you are, Jessica Ray, and Cecilia Foster, our impromptu stories. Gotta tell you, every May we have the Grand Slam Story Slam. And that means that every, in every one of these Story Slams, the audience gets to pick their 2 favorites, and they get invited back in May to tell fresh stories. So not sure how that will work out yet, but you'll be contacted by email. But we certainly appreciate you all and spending time with us. And with COVID around and all that, you know, it's good to see people again, right? Even if it's virtually. So with that said, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you on March 19th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.